So this photo is this week's drawing challenge photo, and I thought it would be a great one for a process video because it lets us practice lots of different skills from perspective to drawing windows and rooftops and chimneys. So I thought it'd be nice for me to demonstrate how I would do that. Also, I will be demonstrating how I simplify things because hopefully when you see the finished painting, you will agree that it looks like the same building and the same trees, but I have not painted every single building. I have not painted every single window. I've very much captured the feel and the essence of this building and its surroundings, but I haven't painted every single little bit. So yeah, you can kind of see how I sort of edit and make artistic decisions and how I handle the perspective and the windows and whatnot. So I'm starting with a sketch in my sketchbook. I'm using a grey water-soluble pencil, so hopefully this will just kind of disappear into the painting once I get some wet paint on top. So what I'm doing at the moment is just working out the angle of the chimneys, which I find stuff like this really hard. I have to look and look again and then check and then look again a third time. And sometimes you think you've got it right and then you go back and you go, oh, actually, that bit of the chimney should be way further back. My biggest tip for something like this is look for reference points. So, you know, one chimney stack, you look, is it higher or lower than the chimney stack next to it? Is it quite close to it or is there a big gap? And look for the negative space around them. I have not got everything right in this sketch at all. I feel like I've got enough right that it feels like the same building, but I definitely have not got everything right in this sketch at all. So I'm just putting in the roof and those kind of diagonal lines on the roof at the moment. I think the chimneys and the rooftop, the angle of that was the most challenging bit. So I thought I'll get that first and then from there I can work out the rest of it. And I can use where the chimneys are to work out where the windows need to be. So I'm not painting all of these buildings. I think there's 3 buildings here. There's many, many windows. I'm doing 5 windows across. So I'm just doing a kind of little zoomed in snapshot of this building. So I'm kind of cropping a bit off on either side and I'm drawing in some guidelines to help me get all the windows lined up and in perspective. So the windows are going to be larger on the left side and then getting smaller towards the right side. And I find a lot of drawing buildings is challenging what you think is there versus what's actually there. So in my head, every single window had a pair of shutters, but when I looked again at this picture, they didn't all have shutters. Or things like the angle of the roof, you might think an angle is sloping upwards and you look at it and you go, oh, actually it's sloping down. So it's really good to just take a step back and look at what's actually there. So I'm just trying to take my time here and get the sketch right and just putting in some horizontal perspective lines just to make sure everything is kind of lined up. I'm looking again at the chimney stack on the right hand side because it's not the angle I thought it was, and actually I think it extends a bit further back than I thought it did. Yeah, I'm looking and seeing that I've left a really big gap between the chimneys, and actually when I look at the photos the gap's very small. So just fixing that and then tidying it up a little bit with an eraser. I don't know if you can erase all coloured pencils, but I personally find with the water-soluble pencils that I use, which are Caran d'Ache Super Colour, if you don't press too hard and you have a good quality eraser and it's good quality paper, that you can erase them, which is very useful. So I'm just tidying up that chimney a little bit, because what I don't want is to be painting it and then getting really confused about what I'm supposed to be doing whilst I'm painting it. So I want to make sure I spend a bit of time getting the sketch right at this point. So now it's time to paint, and I'm setting up my palette the way I always do. So setting it up with the 3 primary colours first, and because I want lots of neutral earthy tones for painting the building, I'm setting it up with my warm primary colours first. So permanent yellow, ultramarine blue and flame red, and lots of white. And I'm going to start by mixing a grey for the roof. And then I'm just going to go ahead and mix up all the different colours I'm going to need for the building now. So I've got them all ready. So different shades of grey and beige, basically. So different colours, and then also different tones of those colours. So having light and dark versions of the same colour. So just adding white to some of the colour. I've been using a disposable palette like this for a few years now, and I actually couldn't imagine painting on like a little paint palette with little circle indents for the paint in. I'm so used to the freedom of painting on a palette and being able to see all the colours in relationship to each other, and being able to let those colours kind of grow and spread across the page. But you'll see with these colour mixes, absolutely every colour mix starts with the same 3 ingredients. It is yellow, blue, red and white. And then the subtlest differences in the proportion of each of those primary colours gives us all these different colours. But they're all made from the same ingredients. Everything is all mixed out of the 3 primaries. Just mixing up a nice kind of terracotta red for the chimneys now. And there's some little terracotta pots on the windowsills as well, which are lovely. And then mixing up a very kind of dark grey that I can use for the iron railings. And then a more watery version of that as well for shadows. Okay, I think I've got my palette for the building all mixed up. So time to paint the roof now. And I've added some more water to make the paint nice and loose, because I want a little bit of tonal variation in the roof. just putting in the tops of the windows as well, just kind of seeing how it all looks together and just making sure I paint the roof down to the right level. So that's why I've just put those little roofs in so I can really see what I'm doing. And just putting that detailing in that little line there. And then I'm going to bring the roof down almost to that line, but not quite. I want a little bit of white space in between. And then putting in some more of the little kind of pointy rooftop bits on top of the windows. And then starting to paint some of the dormer windows that are kind of coming right out of the roof, which I do always find tricky to paint, which is why I'm hesitating a lot. There's just a lot of complicated angles going on there. So I've just Googled chimneys just to make sure I'm using the right words, because I keep talking about the chimney stack, which is what I'm painting now. But yes, that brick bit is the chimney stack, the round things on top of the pots, and then that grey line that I've just drawn is called the flaunching. Apparently, I've never heard of that before, but that's the flaunching. But what I'm painting now is the chimney stacks. I just wanted to check that I was using the word chimney stack right. But anyway, they are a kind of grubby, muted grey. So I've mixed, not grey, well, kind of grey-brown. Yeah, I've mixed a very kind of muted, grubby brown for those. And I'm leaving a little slither of white space in between kind of the side and the front of the chimney stack. I find when I'm painting quite busy buildings, I really want to make sure that I utilise white space to keep a certain lightness, to stop everything feeling too heavy. And I'm just painting the kind of grey tiled bit in between the windows now. Again, putting that line in so that I know how far to come down, and I can leave a little slither of white space there. Just carefully filling in around the windows and leaving that little slither of white space. The thing with the white space is If you decide you don't like it, it's very easy just to paint over it, but it's very hard to put it back. I mean, you can do it with white paint, but it never looks quite as fresh and as clean. And now I've got a very, very soft kind of stone colour for putting in some of the detailing kind of on the next level of the building. So you can probably see there's a lot of kind of holding my brush in midair and pausing with a painting like this. There's a lot of thinking about, does this look right? What colour do I want to use? And what order do I want to paint things in? But yeah, just putting kind of a little shadow in because we're seeing these windows at a bit of an angle. And I love how that little shadow just kind of transforms it. And just finishing off the chimney stack on the right. And now tackling this second dormer window. I'm just working out how far I want to go out to the edge. I don't think I'm going to go right off the paper, but I just needed to fill in a little bit more on the roof. And now I'm going to use this terracotta that I made earlier and paint some of the chimney pots. Just realised that I had a little bit too much paint on my paintbrush, which was making the chimney pots a bit blobby. If you want very kind of soft, rounded, blobby brush strokes, you want lots of wet paint on your brush. And if you want slightly more control and more kind of straight edges, you want a little bit less paint on your brush or slightly drier paint. Just adding a little bit more of the dark colour to the chimney pots so that I've got a little bit of variation so they're not all the same. And where I can, I'm just trying to do them with a single brush stroke, kind of straight down and then a little line on top. With things like this, it's easy to make them look too perfect, whereas they're quite old and they're a little bit kind of higgledy-piggledy, so it's nice to have them not too uniform, not all exactly the same. And just painting these lower ones and just going kind of straight over the chimney stack of the other one, which is the nice thing about gouache. You've got the flexibility to do that because it's opaque.
And just putting in all the chimney stacks and varying the tone a little bit as I go along. Just doing some darker ones as well. This is why I find it really handy to spend a bit of time colour mixing at the beginning of a painting. So with my 3 warm primary colours, I mixed up lots of different browns and beiges and greys and terracotta, and then it means when I'm in the flow of a painting I don't have to stop and spend ages mixing the right colour, because I've got all the colours I need pre-mixed, and if I need to tweak a colour a tiny bit I can, but I'm not starting from scratch. So that's nice in terms of not interrupting the flow, but also just for speed when I'm painting. Once I start, I can just kind of get into it and carry on and work quite efficiently, which is nice, rather than kind of feeling like I'm stopping and starting. I will do some more colour mixing later on with the trees, getting the greens and the yellows. But for now I find it really helpful to have all those different greys and beiges mixed up at the beginning. Just still dealing with those dormer windows, which definitely my least favourite thing in this picture to paint. And now I'm just picking up some more of that warm beigey colour that I've made and filling in the details on the windows on the lower level. So there's kind of a lintel above the window that I'm painting first. There's a lot of pausing here where I'm kind of trying to interpret my sketch and how it matches up with the photo and deciding what I'm going to do. And then I've got a kind of more grey, shadowy version of that warm beige that I'm using to put in the shadows on the kind of the recess where the window is. And then putting in the shadow around the shutters. There's a lot of kind of white and beige in this image, so shadows are then very important for showing definition between things like the windowsill, the lintel, the shutters, that kind of thing. And then just putting in the little terracotta pots in the windows, which I love little details like this. They just kind of give a building personality and really bring it to life, that kind of little human touch. And a few of the windows have, it kind of looks like a blind or something, or a shade in the same colour, terracotta, so that ties everything in nicely. So I'm going to put the leaves in now and then do a bit more in the building afterwards, kind of put in the little balconies and things, but I want to start putting in some leaves at this point. So I've put some more colours on my palette. I've put some primary blue on my palette because I need a fresher, more green toned blue, then ultramarine, which is red toned, for making green. And then I've also just put some more yellow on because I was running low on yellow. So I've mixed primary blue and the permanent yellow to make a green which is quite balanced. It's not super bright, but it's also not really kind of like olive green and warm, kind of khaki coloured. It's sort of a nice natural feeling green that's still quite warm. So I'm just doing some really loose brush strokes for the leaves, and I really love this brush for that. So I'm using the number 4 round Proline brush from Pro Art, and it's just lovely for these kind of loose, expressive, soft brush marks. And yeah, it's just a nice way of doing leaves and making them feel natural without sort of having to carefully plan each leaf and kind of, you know, paint a little point and fill it in and that kind of thing. It's nice to just be able to do it with a single brush stroke, and then it's easier to vary the shape and the direction and the weight of the leaves in a way that feels more natural. So I'm putting in some yellow leaves now, and I'm using the permanent yellow deep straight out of the tube, which is a really beautiful, deep, warm yellow. I love the yellow in this image. It's kind of what drew me to it, and the building is so monochrome, so I wanted to really celebrate the beautiful colours in the trees. So I've put in a few leaves, and now I'm going to mix up a big wash for this area. So I'm adding some primary yellow. So I've got the permanent yellow deep, which has red undertones, and then I've got the primary yellow, which has got green undertones. And I'm mixing those together to get more of a kind of mid-coloured neutral yellow. And just filling in the leaves and looking at the reference photo for the directionality of the leaves and trying to capture that. And then now I'm just filling in a bit looser, so still using the same size 4 round brush, but I've watered the gouache down so that it's kind of semi-transparent, so you can see it's going over the top of those green leaves. Sorry, my head keeps getting in the way. I'm not sure why. I felt like I needed to see this really closely, but I seem to have done. So yeah, I'm using this watery mixture, which is semi-transparent, so the green leaves are showing through nicely, and it gives a nice kind of soft look where you get a sense of the fullness of the trees whilst also getting a sense of individual leaves as well. And I'm just filling that in very kind of naturally and organically. So now I'm going to erase the pencil lines from the top half of the image, which is really going to clean it up. Also, some time has passed and the leaves have completely dried. Obviously, never erase pencil lines until your wet parts of the painting are completely dry, because your paper will rip. Sorry, it looks like there's an earthquake because the whole table's shaking, but I'm just sort of vigorously erasing the pencil lines. I've sketched with a water-soluble colour pencil. I personally find that you can erase coloured pencil lines as long as you've got a good quality eraser and it's a good quality pencil. They will erase, but you do have to be quite firm with them. But I love this part, taking all the pencil lines out, because suddenly the painting then looks much more fresh and clean and kind of pulled together, and then you can see really clearly what it needs, where it needs more definition, more contrast, that kind of thing. Okay, finally finished erasing. And then I'm mixing up a darker grey, and I'm using a smaller brush now. This is a size 2. And I'm going to be filling in little details at this point. So now that I've got the tree painted in the lower half, I can see how everything kind of balances a bit more. So I'll be putting in some fine details using darker tones in both the building, and I'll be putting branches in on the tree as well. So that'll kind of tie everything together and kind of add some contrast as well. Just adding the lines on the roof and around the chimney stack. And a little extra line at the top. I love adding those little decorative touches and just leaving that little slither of white space. Just looking at what needs to be a touch darker or what needs kind of neatening up. And then using that darker grey and a small brush to add the little kind of wrought iron railings on the balconies. I don't know if you can hear that, but there's a plane flying over the head. Sometimes we get kind of old-fashioned biplanes fly overhead where I live. Just putting in the kind of tiles on the roof. I really love adding these little details that just bring it all together. And as always with these kind of things, I batch it. So I do all the horizontal lines first, and then I will do the vertical lines next. And I just find that it helps the lines stay more consistent and just speeds up the painting process as well. just putting in some of the architectural details, using this kind of soft beigey grey again. And I'm just starting to put in the details on the shutters now, so I'm kind of painting the shadows kind of in between the slats of the shutters. And I'm kind of holding the brush below so that I'm pulling the brush across, so I'm getting a nice flat line, if that makes sense. So each line kind of starts with quite a flat line rather than a pointed line, if that makes any sense. Just adding a little bit more shadow and definition where it needs it. Just mixing up a very, very watery wash of this colour, just putting in the detail around the window. And then filling in a bit of the wall behind. I'm now using a very watery mixture of that dark grey that I mixed up to fill in the windows. So doing kind of 2 rectangles, leaving a bit of white space in between for the window pane, or the bit of wood in between the window panes. Just painting the window panes in on these upper windows and leaving a bit of space where there's a blind in some of the windows. And then a much lighter wash on this one because the blind's pulled down, so it's kind of white inside the window rather than the dark of the room. And then using that same very dark grey for the branches and using my number 2 brush so I get a nice delicate line. And the thing I find with tree branches, the challenge is always just making the line feel natural and organic. So I try to hold the brush very loosely and just let it flow and let it kind of be a bit wiggly. I think we tend to try and impose too much order when we're drawing things like trees, so branches that are kind of perfectly smooth or branches that all kind of fan out evenly spaced and not overlapping, and that's not what trees are really like. So I have to remind myself, let the branches overlap, let the branches be uneven, that kind of thing. It just helps it look more natural. And then just putting in the little iron railings on the lower windows. I realised watching this video back and doing the voiceover, I completely missed a whole row of windows. But this video is very much about interpreting a photo and simplifying it. There probably are people who could look at this photo and paint every building, every chimney stack, every window, but it would just take me hours and hours, and I'm kind of more interested in just capturing the beauty of the building and the essence of the building and the way the building interacts with the beautiful trees. So yeah, I've massively simplified it and kind of lost a whole row of windows, but I don't think it matters. I think it kind of captures the feel and the essence of the photo. Just going around and kind of adding more detail and making the shadows a little bit deeper where they need it. just decided those lines on the top on the roof aren't standing out enough, so I'm going back over them with a darker grey. One of the things with gouache is how it looks on the palette, and then how it looks wet on the paper is not how it's going to look when it's dry. And sometimes dark colours can dry lighter and light colours can really dry darker, so you don't always know how it's going to look until it's dry. So because the roof was dry and the lines were wet, the lines looked darker, but once they dried, there actually wasn't much difference, so I've gone back over them with a darker grey. When I first started painting with gouache, and for years and years, I always did little swatches on a piece of paper. So I'd have test paper and I'd mix the colour and I'd swatch it, and then if it wasn't right I'd adjust it and I'd swatch it again, adjust it. I don't really do that anymore. I hardly ever do that. I think because I've just been painting with gouache for well over 10 years now, probably like 15 years. So, and I know the colours that I paint with really well. I know the kind of Winsor & Newton set and the primary colours that I paint with. So I know how things are going to turn out. But it is a great practice if you're new to gouache to swatch them. And I did that for years and years. So I'm just putting in some more leaves now over the top of that yellow wash, and just using the Permanent Yellow Deep, which is the darker yellow. And that's kind of a nice subtle bit of detail over the wash, just to see some of the individual leaves. So that's it. That's my interpretation of this piece. So yeah, hopefully that was a helpful video for how I would tackle a piece like this, how I would simplify it but still keep its essence.